We will now continue with SharePoint controls, but this time we will work with some of the data controls. Specifically, we are going to use an SP grid view and bind it to the data from a selected list on our intranet. So here's some code that does exactly that. We start off with an SP grid view and we'll call that task grid. We instantiate it to a new SP grid view and we set some properties. Very simply, we set auto generate columns to false and we set the bound field to new bound field, and then set its properties as we set its data field to title and its header text to do. We add the columns to the grid. We then access the lists. So we instantiate an SP web object and SP list object. We also define an SP data source. So all of these components are provided by the SharePoint object model. Then we can specify that the list property of the data sources is the task list. And then we can modify some additional properties, such as allow sorting and so forth. We finally bind the task grid, the SP grid view, to its data source. So in a few lines of code, we can use a visual display of an SP grid view to bind to a task list. So we don't have to do anything like iterating through list items and rendering table rows or anything like that if we know of the existence of some of these controls. So let's add the web part to our page, and it's in our custom web part category, and it's called data example. A few simple clicks and we have the control on the page, and when I save it we get the view that a normal user will see. So we have our header of to do and we have the list items rendered in the SP grid view. Just to recap, we used an SP grid view and some bound fields, an SP web, an SP list and SP data source objects, and we tied them all together with just a few lines of code. And this meant that we did not have to reinvent the wheel on how to display tabular data in a SharePoint site.